graders. As you can see, I am not in my art studio today. I'm in my kitchen because I want to get started on our new board, which is the Mosaic Grid board. And actually, it's my favorite, so I'm really excited to show you guys how to start this. So we're just going to get right into it. Let's learn about the artist that we're going to kind of replicate today, and then we'll get right into our demo. All right, guys. Today we look at the self-portraits of this artist, Chuck Close. Chuck is a very special artist. Over 30 years ago, he was left paralyzed after his spinal artery collapsed, yet he still continued to paint. Since he does not have the use of his hands, he straps his paintbrush to them and paints without moving his fingers. He simply moves his arms up and down to make his brush strokes. Chuck is a photorealist painter, which means he uses photography and photographs to make his paintings look like those photographs. We are going to focus on this self-portrait. Chuck has used a grid to draw his face, and within each square of that grid are many different colors. Up close, the painting looks very messy and out of focus, but when you step back, the colors and squares blend to make the picture look like it is in focus. Today you will learn a similar technique when creating your mosaic board. Your board will look like mosaic tiles, and you will use a grid to create that effect. Now let's go over the supplies you will need for your mosaic tile board. First of all, you will need one board with your face on it, which you should have one left. You will need a pencil and a ruler. You will need either markers, foil, and a small paintbrush, or a watercolor set, which includes a paintbrush, and a water cup. All right, everybody, here we go. So the first three things you need to start with, you don't need your markers or the paint or any of the paint brushes yet. You just need your pencil, a ruler, and your board because you have to grid off your board. So what I would do is pause this video right now because I would actually make the grid right along with me. And that's what we do if we would have been in class. You would have actually made your grid right alongside me. So go grab that stuff and we'll get started. You good? All right, let's go. So you're going to lay your ruler along the long side of your board first, which should measure 7 inches. It might be a little off because I, don't always cut straight. But you are going to put a dot with your pencil at every inch mark on your board. Now let's do this really lightly because eventually you are going to erase your pencil lines. So you're just going to put a little dot at every inch mark along the long side of your board. Then you're going to slide your ruler over to the other long side and do the exact same thing. A dot at every inch mark. Okay, then you're going to connect those dots with a very lightly drawn line. So the dots that are directly across from each other, connect with a straight line. Make sure you use that ruler. We want them nice and straight. So every dot and every line goes from one side of the board to the other. All right, gonna do the same thing now on the short sides. So lay your ruler along the short side of the board, which should measure 5 inches. You're going to then make a dot at every inch mark. Slide your ruler up. Make a dot at every inch mark. And then connect those dots with a nice, lightly pencil drawn straight line. Because again, you are going to erase your pencil lines. Okay, and there we go. And that's how you grid off your mosaic board. So I said that you needed either foil, markers, and a paintbrush, or a paint set that usually comes with a paintbrush. Now, if you absolutely do not have a small paintbrush, then you can just use markers and not make these into watercolors. But you're actually going to learn today how to make watercolors out of markers, foil, and a paintbrush. Now, if you have your own watercolor set, then you don't have to do any of the marker stuff. Now, if you want to try it, go for it, because it's actually a really cool technique that I literally just learned. And I'm going to be honest, never tried it before. So hopefully the Instagram video I was watching actually works. All right, so when you start your mosaic board, the key to making this board is to never let your paint, or if you're only drawing with marker, that's fine, never let your color touch any of the grid lines. Now, all of your face lines are touching grid lines. That's okay, but you do not want your color to touch any of the grid lines. So you're going to make little squares of color in between all of your grid lines, which is like a mosaic tile. So when you make a mosaic tile, you have these lines in between all of the glass pieces of mosaic, and it's called grout. So it's kind of like a cement. And so that makes every little piece of tile not connect. All right, and that's what we're basically, the idea is for this board, okay? So the cool technique I'm going to teach you today, which I'm kind of teaching myself, if you take foil and you take a marker and you put marker on that foil, you can do a bunch of different colors at a time, and then you take a paintbrush and you get it wet, you now have made watercolors. So you have to have a little paintbrush to be able to do this, and actually I have a scrap piece of paper over here. Let me grab that. So it actually makes watercolors. Pretty sweet. Again, if you do not have a paintbrush, you absolutely cannot find one in your house, there's no way you can get one, then you can just draw with markers. Just make sure that you do not touch any of the grid lines. That is the key to this board. So, I'm going to show you how to start that. Now, this board is non-realistic colors. You are not making the colors of your actual face and your hair. The background obviously can be any color, but it's not like the pointillism board. This is completely crazy different colors. Just like your color blast was not supposed to be realistic. All right. So for my skin color here, I think I'm going to use green. Add some more of my marker here. Get my paintbrush wet. All right, now there are actually some really nice spots that are just face color here. So I'm going to carefully, about a millimeter from the grid line, I'm just going to make a little box of green paint. All right, then moving on, add a little bit more there. Beside it, I have my nose here. I'm going to go along the line of my nose just so it looks a little different. And again, I am not touching that grid line with my paint or with my color here. All right. And the nice thing is with watercolor, you can actually shade again, like we did with our realistic, and some of you did with your Color Blast boards. So I know there is a line with my nose here, and I can touch that line because that's not a grid line. So I'm just going to go right beside that grid line and fill in that square. Now, to make the lines in my nose, I might actually let this dry and maybe take like a black or a different color and kind of make that little line so I can see the lines in my nose. Now, let's come up here to my eye, which is going to be a little tricky. So I still have some skin color in that little box here, So I'm going to go right up to the eye line. I'm going to avoid that grid line again. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint my eye a different color because it's not the same color as my skin. Now, when you paint something beside another thing that with watercolor, you want to let it dry. So I'm going to let that little green sliver there dry before I actually go in and finish my eye. So there's still a little more skin color in this box. And again, I'm not touching that grid line. And you really want to make sure you have a small paintbrush if you are using a paintbrush and you're not drawing with a marker, because it's going to get those nice little details. Okay, so let me see if that's dry. If that's actually dry, I can go in and start painting part of my eye. Going up right beside that green in my face. But I'm, again, not touching that grid line. All right, so like I always do, I'm going to speed this up. I'm going to paint the whole thing, and then we'll see what we have. Okay, so before we can do the next step, you might want to wait overnight or at least a couple hours because this paint really has to be dry to do the next step. So I'm going to wait about 12 hours. Wow, that was a fast 12 hours. Okay, the last and final step after everything is dry. Now you don't have to wait 12 hours like I did, but a couple hours would be good. Just make sure this paint is dry. Now you're going to erase all of your grid lines, all of your pencil lines. And if you noticed, I always get this question when we're in class with the 8th graders. You can put your paint all the way up to the edge. You can also leave a little space, like there's a grid line there. I did it both ways just to kind of show you. And if you notice, on some of my lines here, where the grid line is, I had some I had some paint that splashed. You can always white out anything that should not be painted. So any color that should not be there, if you use markers or paint, you can always white it out to make it go away. And then it looks like it wasn't there. So if you have whiteout, great. If not, you know, I know things are not like normal, so don't worry a whole lot if it does get on the grid line a little bit. Okay, so once you clean up the grid lines, it should look like a mosaic tile board. And like I said, none of my paint should be touching those grid lines because that looks like the grout that is in a mosaic. But I do have a little touch up I could do down here. Okay, everybody, can't wait to see yours.